Yeah, no, I really liked I listened through the whole Dork of the Year episode. And yeah, it's honestly pretty refreshing. I think so often, there's kind of that prisoner's dilemma type thing going on with construction where everybody's like, no, we're gonna do this, so you can't. Like it's kind of exhausting sometimes.
Yeah.
DorkCast 44, BIM Is Reality. In this episode, we're down 2 dorks again, but we bring in 3 guests. Chad Lux from US Engineering, Rob Miller from Faro, and Gabe Munes from OpenSpaceAI to talk about reality capture. We cover current uses, where they see the future going, and why construction is so broken. We have some laughs as always, and get some good insights on how we should be using different types of reality capture. You all should be doing it.
And we're live. Here, episode 44 of the Construction DorkCast. BIM is Reality. I think we got a little lazy with the show title this time around, but we'll try a little harder next time. So as you could tell, I am not Jeff Sample. I'm not the usual MC of what we've got going on here, but I'm going to fill in his absence, and we're going to see what we can do. So I'm going to lead off with me, and I've got one of Travis's favorites. I've got a little IPA, and this one's the Technicolor Dream Cat coming from Sun King.
That's pretty
here
cool.
In Indianapolis. Some pretty cool can art going on. But
at least your terrible beer has a nice can.
Right. We at least have that going for it. So, but well, fine, Travis. I guess what's so much better? What do you got?
Well, I have it's called Stormy River Rye Whiskey. I picked this up because at my local liquor distributor, the guy was actually there from Peoria, Illinois. If it's something semi-local, they're a couple hours away, but if it's something semi-local, I usually try to pick it up and try it out. And it's actually a really smooth, really good rye. Trent, maybe you'll get a sampling of it at some point in time. And
yeah, right. I'm sure I will. I will.
So,
well, we've got three guests here today. It's just Travis and I this time around, but we've got 3 guests from 3 different organizations. So I'm going to start off with we'll do Rob Miller, and you're tell us who you're with, what you do, and if you've got a beverage, let us know what it is.
Excellent. Thanks, Trent. Yeah, so Rob Miller, I am the AEC segment director at Faro Technologies. I've been in the construction tech now for 21 years. I spent a good portion of my career at Trimble and then in Trimble's distribution before ending up over here at Faro. To drink today, I have something hyper local. So about 9 months ago, I moved to Chattanooga, Tennessee. And today I'm drinking a bottle of Chattanooga whiskey. This is their limited edition experimental single barrel number 163. So nice bourbon. Really impressed actually for a little local distillery what they have, and enjoy the fact that they're 10 minutes away. So
that's fantastic.
Yep.
Really cool. All right, Chad, give us the rundown.
All right. Chad Lux, Quality Control Manager for US Engineering. I've been in construction now for over 14 years. Try to look for ways to speed up processes for quality and documentation and project retention, risk management. As far as a drink, well, I'm from Pennsylvania boy, so I had to represent Yingling. I went all the way back to Pennsylvania to get it and bring it out here to Colorado. So thank you, Pottsville.
That's a great beer. It's definitely one I like to stumble onto.
That's kind of a popular go-to. So
yeah, I did take a break though after college from a little bit, but
got to dry out the liver a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, Gabe.
My name is Gabe Munes, and I'm a solutions engineer with OpenSpace. I've been here about 3 years now, and that's kind of my entire sort of exposure to construction has just been learning from customers, kind of getting to see their processes and really them educating me on best practices more than anything. But yeah, that's all about me. And for the drink, I'm gonna be, kind of joining Rob here with some Basil Hayden bourbon whiskey with a nice oversized ice cube in it.
Nice choice.
Not hyper local, of course, but
You can't go wrong with Basil Hayden. That's a pretty strong choice.
it's kind of a classic, right?
I think,
All right.
Gabe, you said you've only been around construction for a couple of years, but let's be honest, it doesn't take long to figure out what this industry's like, right?
I will say it took some time for me to really wrap my head around it, but what I've always loved is just people in construction are so willing to share. If you just come with kind of that genuine curiosity, it's like, here's what we're passionate about. We're happy to educate you. And I've always appreciated that, but I wouldn't say it was quite that easy. Definitely it's about this point where I'm starting to feel a lot more comfortable, just seeing ins and outs, different types of customers, how they run things, right? But yeah.
So Gabe, this will be the first tangent that we take because I'm curious. If you're solutions engineer, so you've got more of the development background. What industries had you worked in previously, and how does that kind of, you've said that the construction people are very open and honest. I mean, is that kind of compare and contrast that from where you came from?
Yeah, so actually, initially I was a loan officer for a while for residential homes, which was interesting. I always kind of had a passion for tech, and at a certain point started putting together a programming portfolio. But I kind of realized like it's going to take me quite a while to get to the point where I could really land like a developer role. But I started thinking about like, well, what if I could do something customer facing where that technical knowledge is helpful, but I'm not competing with other sort of lifetime developers, engineers, right? And so that was kind of how I got into the first tech company I worked at, which built mobile apps. I don't know if I'd say people were open there. It's kind of interesting. A lot of our customers thought they had these really original ideas and were kind of trying to protect their IP while telling you what they thought was enough, for us to be able to build their app. But yeah, I don't know, I was kind of surprised with construction because obviously being an outsider, I got pulled in through a friend to OpenSpace. I was at the 15th or 16th hire. And I thought the tech was going to be the cool part, and I couldn't have been more wrong. I mean, construction has really been kind of the cool part ever since then. And yeah, like I said, I really kind of felt grateful that certain customers have kind of taken me under their wing, and construction has kind of these unspoken sort of, not rules, but things everybody kind of knows but doesn't talk about. And those things, I think, is what I allude to when I say it's hard to figure out certain things that just get talked about less. Like, when you're at a conference and the speaker says, as-builts are always perfect, right? And everybody falls out of their chairs laughing. I had no idea, right? It's like, this is supposed to be funny. Okay. Get a little lesson from a customer on what's going on.
Yeah, you got to be around for a little while. It's like getting into a new friend group or something like that. You don't know all the inside jokes yet. But that's great. I was kind of interesting. Now Rob, coming from the technology side and being for 20 years. I mean, where were you before? And how would you compare and contrast?
I stumbled into this, to be honest. I thought I was going to be a pharmacist, and chemistry kicked my ass in college and said I probably need something else, right? So I went into surveying and mapping, and kind of shortly after school went into the tech side and started with technical support and training. My whole career has really been construction. I did some heavy civil construction early on in my career with Trimble, and then quickly pivoted into buildings. And I've spent most of my time in the product development side, but my family's not builders. I'm not overly handy. So I really, early on in my career had to spend a lot of time with customers trying to understand what were those pain points, what problems were we trying to solve, were we actually trying to solve the same problems? But looking back, I mean, I love this industry. I'm so glad I'm here, but never would have guessed that this is where I'd end up. So.
Really, really cool. All right. So the theme of the episode is about reality capture. reality and BIM as it relates to construction, right? So I'm gonna kick this over to Chad, and I think just to get the conversation going, Chad, I kind of want to hear from you. What are some of the ways that you and your group are leveraging, reality capture, at least at your group? And it could be anything, whether it's with laser scanning or some of the stuff that OpenSpace and those types are doing. Just give us a rundown of kind of what some of the really cool things that you've seen over in the past couple of years.
Okay. So we'll start with the old-fashioned way was Gabe was making a joke about as-builts. So, foremen would mark up where they installed their systems on a piece of paper. It would get to some person, doing CAD. A lot of times if it's, within a certain distance, it's close enough, it's fine. But, that's for like one system. But when you look at the whole picture, we wanted to find something more that captures like what is really going on, what's really being installed. So at first we also use Matterport, which is, you guys have probably seen it. Like if you've ever looked at an RV, you click on the little things and you can do this 360 scan around. So we use that software as well for capturing. But we use that when you're like, if the room is 100% finished and you want to get like really high quality detail in your video, that's what we'll switch over to. But we're also looking for something that we can use every day. It doesn't take long to use. It's real simple. So that's when we started using OpenSpace. And I think I've got OpenSpace set up now on 23 of our projects. We fully committed to using OpenSpace in December. So it's climbing. What I like about that is the one school here in Greeley that I've walked, it's a little over 300,000 square feet, schools, a lot of rooms, several different levels. It took me, I don't know, 2.5, 3 hours to walk it all. But what's neat about it is I can do my walk, I can walk around and look at stuff. But then you get back to your desk and you're like, oh crap, what is that out in the field supposed to look like versus the model? So now what I do is I pull up the 360 video walk from OpenSpace and I hit boom, compare it in BIM. And I can view them side by side on the same screen. And so when I'm looking around at stuff, I can see if the piping and sheet metal, or even the sprinkler guy, if they're installed in the right location. We were all joking about as-built and stuff again. Well, really, this is doing the as-built for you, and it's getting the Romex. You guys have been in construction, the conduits that are never modeled. It's capturing all of that stuff. So that's kind of where we're using it, is to gather all that information into one spot, even if it is a couple of different softwares. I mean, we try out laser scanning as well. It's just how it is today. There's so many options out there and so many competitors. It keeps pushing the limits of construction and AI capturing.
So Travis and Trent, is it too early to give mention to Nathan Wood and hashtag shared pains? But, I think as part of the CPC, I've now forgotten if it was 2020 or 2021, but we did a reality capture initiative. And we were looking at different types of tech and what the benefits were. But Chad, to your point, we really talked about the applications, right? Because you have your standard, iPhone camera, you have your 360 photos, 360 videos, drones, you have your Matterport, your, traditional Faro laser scanners. And we bucketed this into 5 major categories for reality capture. We think it's pretty close, but it was, document existing conditions, project stakeholder collaboration, production tracking and work complete, installation and placement accuracy verification, and digital twin as built for handover. And then we started looking at, right, what's the right tech? Because 360 imagery versus laser scanning versus videos, there's different applications, different benefits. There's clearly different costs. There's, different skill sets. And I think that was one of the things that as a group we really worked hard on, was trying to realize that not one of these solves all of them, right? And it's finding the right tool for, whatever that need is that you have on that project or at that time.
That's super important. We see that in the contracting world a lot, and we have to go through exercises to try and figure out what piece of equipment or software or tech do we want to utilize for this particular application. I mean, people tend to lump the term reality capture. I think when you say reality capture, the first thing that people in our industry think of is probably laser scanning. I think that's probably that's probably where their mind goes, and that is a big part of it. But you kind of look at the evolution and what reality capture really is. I think originally it was a guy going to the job site and looking at something, right? Like that was reality capture. Like you had the guy with the skill set that was going to do the job that you needed him to do, go look at it. Okay, he captured the reality. Now he owns that, and he's going to go do whatever application or task that needs to be done. And now we're seeing this whole network of options come about where it's like, if a detailer needs to go in there and detail an entire mechanical room down to a 16th of an inch, okay, we've got the laser scanner. There's our application. If we're trying to track what changes, as built wise on a job site day to day, you see the 360 camera stuff and the stuff that like OpenSpace and Struction Site and I know I'm missing a few.
Hollow Builder.
Yeah. I mean, there's a bunch of them. There's all these little applications, and Matterport fits in there somewhere too. I mean, they're kind of, I would put them in between the two, actually, kind of. So it's really, you're right, Rob. We have all these different tools that we can use to accomplish a certain task, and the evolution of it is has really, really, really taken off. So, but I want to stick to maybe laser scanning just a little bit with you here, Rob. So just real quick, what are some of the big evolutions that you've seen in the laser scanning world here in the past year or two?
Yeah. So I think it's interesting, going back a number, even beyond the last year or two, right? I mean, scanners were big, they were slow. We've seen, the miniaturization of scanning type technologies, making them obviously more portable, longer battery life. Speed of capture has been a really big one, right? And the time it takes to actually set up at each station and capture a 360-degree scan. So there's been a race in the speed of capture. Obviously, get people off of a site, get to processing and analyzing and modeling data as soon as possible. That's a big one. I think even somewhat competing tech to a traditional tripod laser scanner is what we're seeing with, iPhones, iPads, the mobile type LiDARs. There's applications for that. So we're really seeing this miniaturization. But with that, I think we're seeing that open up to the opportunity to democratize the use of point clouds. Historically, it's really been one or two guys, right? Or one or two gals. It's been the VDC department that's handled it. But as we're starting to see the technology become better understood and more consumable, we're starting to see other people in the project teams, maybe not even on the job. They might be in a regional office or a design team, halfway around the world, that are able to start working with this data. I think the other thing we're starting to see a shift to now also is more in-field, on-job processing, analysis, decision-making, right? I think that's the next big wave in the scanning, is we'll see more of that. Like, why do I have to go back to the office and process and crunch through this and then run this? Why can't I do it right there in the field, right? My slab was just poured. I want my results now, not tomorrow. So
it's interesting you're talking about the size of the scanners. I have an iPhone 12 Pro, and last week even Gabe and I were working on this, but I 3D scanned a chiller with my iPhone, and we sent it up to the system, and then we have VC guys, like you're saying, that bring it into Revit, and they can compare what's modeled, what's accurate. Is crazy. How do you do it? I have no idea, but I just know how to scan it.
Well,
and look, there's totally a place for that, right? It's, that's maybe not your final as built or handover, right? But there is absolutely, throughout a 24-month project, there's applications for all these techs, differing accuracy sizes, No doubt.
Yeah, I think that I mean it leads into a good segue then towards Gabe is like, okay, well we've asked that question of Rob and laser scanning. Like, Gabe, were you seeing the photogrammetry and you know lidar? I think will probably play a part in it, but like I mean, you guys are in the 3D 60 images and the open spaces are like, I mean, you're just using the raw image and the raw videos, right? Where you kind of see it going from there.
So one thing to touch on is what Chad was mentioning. We have actually gotten into the Apple LiDAR kind of iPhone and iPad Pro scanning as well. But yeah, in terms of I'll kind of differentiate there. With the scanning, I think I really liked one thing that Rob touched on, which is the ability to consume the data. I think that's one of the biggest pieces that I've been seeing change in across the board in construction softwares, right? It's like, okay, we got the data, or we have this system that's capable of this thing, but then how do I share it? How do I communicate it? How do I get it to more people? I think, that's something that we're consistently kind of working on. This iPhone LiDAR scanning functionality is newer, and it's something we're trying to figure out, like, where can we push it? How can we loop people into that so they're seeing it too? But on the reality capture kind of image computer vision side, I think one of the things that's interesting is just one, hardware is continuing to improve, like the Ricoh Theta Z1, which is kind of the flagship camera integration that we offer. That wasn't available when I first started. Like, the difference in cameras from when I first started at OpenSpace 3 years ago to now is insane. And what that allows our engineers to do is kind of equally insane. So I think, naively, I came into OpenSpace thinking that the image pinning was the be all end all goal. Really, that's just a means to an end, right? Like, the ability to capture data is kind of the perfect segue to building AI products, because you need those data sets to build the AI products. And I think that's the space that we're starting to head into now. I think Chad has beta live for our overhead mechanical ductwork tracking. So we plan to continue to build on what's able to be tracked, but we're also starting to look at, what can we do with BIM? What can we do with potentially QA QC as well? And especially, as not just kind of the external hardware we need gets better, but also our own work and algorithms and sort of IP gets better. I think it's just going to open a lot more doors into, the data capture is a lot easier now, but let's see if we can increase the value of the outputs that we're providing. And again, continue to just make that more consumable. It's like sometimes, data without context is not as useful as you think. You have a percent complete on a floor, but if the project team is thinking in terms of their schedule or in terms of areas, it's harder to kind of, understand what the next step or action item is if you don't have that context with it. So, that's kind of another direction as well, as bringing better context from other tools to give that data more value.
I like that context. So the other question I had to have to ask is, so anytime that Google asks me to prove I'm not a robot and to point out all the duct work, that's your guys' fault?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah,
So Chad, I mean, I'm kind of curious around the context issue, as a contractor. I know Trent and I have our own thoughts. Like, what are you doing not only to, you're doing a lot of capture of this data, but what are you doing then to both apply context to what you're getting, but also infer some context out of it?
So what we're also trying to do is, we're doing all these scans, doesn't matter if it's laser scan, whatever you're doing. We're trying to, at the end of the project, create like a virtual O&M to hand over to the owner and say, like, here's your building. We teach them how to run. I'm just going to use OpenSpace. We teach them how to work it. And then when you go to each piece of equipment, I take a picture of it and it's tagged on the drawing. It has all the submittals, the O&Ms, the startup sheet, everything like the maintenance guy would need. It's right there at his fingertips. So we're trying to push this even further, beyond the as-built, forget that. We're trying to make it more realistic. So, a lot of these buildings that we're doing now are being managed remotely. I'm sure Rob's probably even heard that or seen that as well. So you might have a guy managing a building in Denver, but he lives in California. So this way, at least with it being captured, he can actually see what the building looks like and what's going on that he's trying to take care of and manage.
We would be remiss if we didn't bring up Jeff Sample's data twin hashtag right here. I think that's appropriate. But no, I think that you're right. I think that's what a lot of us are doing. When we've all, we've done some work with Rob's group on some of that stuff and trying to build that digital O&M, and that we've even gone as far as playing with some of the mixed reality, augmented reality, and kind of doing the same sort of thing. So no, that's really cool. Trent?
I want to go back to something Gabe talked about just a little bit ago, and I'll open this up to anyone. And this is kind of, I'm going to put like the nerd wedge in real quick and kind of divert the conversation. But you talked about the software and the hardware and things that are happening. So who's waiting on who is what I want to know. Who's waiting? Are we all waiting on the hardware improvements, or are we all waiting on software to catch up to what the hardware is putting out? This is a dork out, all right. So I want you to think about it.
Question of the year. I love this. This is awesome.
Let's do it. Let's go for it. Gabe, Rob, someone. Who's waiting on who? Is the hardware the one that needs to improve, or are we waiting on the software?
I'll take a shot at it. So right now, I think the hardware is a little bit ahead, because they can capture with all these lenses and everything, they're putting in everything, they can get it. But now we need the software side to, let's go back to the sheet metal tracking that Gabe was talking about. How much more data or how much more information can you gather out of that's being tracked automatically? So that's kind of where I would say.
I tend to agree with you, but I don't think it ends. I think it's a game of leapfrog, right? I think the software is going to get to a point where we're like, oh, fantastic. Now what can we do with more hardware, better hardware, new sensors? So I think it's a continuous game that we play, but I think you're right. I think today we're probably, the hardware is about set. We need a little more software, and then we play the hardware game.
Yeah, you're right. It's definitely leapfrog.
I feel like kind of one of the things that's kind of tough though is that like the software development can't really start until the hardware is out. Like we do have relationships with some manufacturers where we're like hearing kind of about stuff ahead of time, but
you can't foreshadow, you can't, pre-plan.
We're all friendly here. Everything's wide open right here. Nobody's listening.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to go with the software has the catching up to do, because just when you kind of see what we've done so far, like everybody still feels like there's a long way to go. And that's with the existing kind of hardware, because at the end of the day, like some of these algorithms, and like Rob must see this too, like processing point cloud scans that are millions of points, like that's insane. And then making it viewable to somebody that's on, a really basic level, crappy like site computer, and they can still access it. Like that's, I feel like a lot of people don't acknowledge that. That's like magic, basically.
So is it fair to say that maybe the hardware is behind, but maybe it's not the actual hardware of the laser scanner. Maybe it's our PC hardware.
The consumption hardware, yeah.
Or networks
or VM hardware. Oh yeah, or networks. I mean, network is hardware, right? I mean,
that's fair.
Yeah.
Because you have the benefit, Gabe, though, you can iterate faster than the hardware side, right? That's a luxury that the software side has. So
you can't go into a factory and just 3 weeks after you just set up production, rip it all down and start all over again and be back up in a short amount of time. But it leads me to a question that I can piggyback. So we talked about which is kind of more ready first for the hardware or the software, but I would say maybe a bigger question is what do we as an industry have to do to be more ready to kind of both accept and utilize this kind of stuff? Because I think we as a construction technologists, we stay on that bleeding edge ahead of everything, but the industry, I would say, we're
It's still moving
talking
faster than
we're
our
talking to the
average.
1%.
Yeah,
What do we need to do? And
Yeah.
I would actually pose that. I mean, this is again a question for anybody, because I would be interested to hear Gabe as a new person. Rob has been around for a while on the tech side, and then Chad is a longtime contractor. I think we all kind of would have a different perspective. So whoever wants to go first.
And kind of right now we're in the age generation gap, right? We have the guys that have been doing this forever, but they're about to retire. So some of them are not willing to change. And otherwise, like they see you walking around with the camera on your head, they're like, what the hell are you doing? Or they see you looking at a model in the trailer and they're like, you could just walk across the street and see the building. So it's kind of, so like when I come across something like that, I take the time to show them what I'm doing and show them the why and what I think might be better. But it's just, I think it's the timing. About in another 10 years, I'm going to say it's going to be more open to more of this electronic stuff, just because of the generations. Most of us, even on this call, we've grown up with computers. We know how to use all this technology stuff. So that's my thought.
So
Not patient
not
enough
being
for
a
that.
builder, I think, one of the things I wonder, so we talk about a $13 million project. What's a $40,000 scanner or a $5,000 annual, subscription? I still struggle personally.
That's my
a
new
little
fishing
bit.
boat, right?
Fair enough. But isn't the change orders going to pay for that? So you're fine, right? But I guess whether that's owner driven, whether that's GC driven, I still think there's a component that has to be driven from the project, separate from is the tech ready or do we have the consumption tools, the right hardware, the right software. There's still an industry adoption that has to be driven from someone outside of Gabe and my organizations, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, one thing that I've always really emphasized, my wife is a teacher and I feel like we really agree on this. It's like, you have to make information relevant and just be able to convey it in a way that's easy for people to pick up, but also where you're not boring them or saying things that are irrelevant. Like, I so often will see like marketing around construction tech tools where it's like, why did they say it like that? Like, nobody in construction thinks in tech buzzwords, like nobody you're just going to lose people that way. And I think that's one piece that everybody could do a better job at. I mean, sometimes like I'm talking to somebody that I'd consider as like the innovator on the project team, and they're coming back to me and saying like, I love the tool, but I just can't get, whatever persona it is that I'm trying to get to use it. And then ask them like, well, what are you telling them? And they start going through all the features that they showed them. And it's like, well, they don't care about the features. Like, they want to hear about how it's going to help them specifically. Like, take a situation and draw a shorter line from point A to point B. And that's where you'll get buy-in. And I think if everyone focused a little bit more on that, it's like another piece that would help. But
damn it, all comes back to the people again. Can't we just automate them out?
Yep. We could,
Gabe,
sorry, Rob.
something you touched there, though, I think, so we use a term or a slogan, inside of Faro, which is SFW. So freaking what, right? To your point, when you're talking to superintendent, a project manager, whatever that individual's role is, what does it mean to them, right? How does any tech that we're adopting that somebody's asking me to pay for, what does it do for my schedule? What does it do for my costs, right? What does it do, to help me do my job? And that's a big deal, because you're right. We can't be talking specs, megapixels, parts per million. There's a small group of us that actually geek out on that. The rest of the industry doesn't, right?
Yeah. You want to know what I want to know? I mean, as a contractor, this is what you really want to know. And I'm wondering if any of you have any insight, but we talk, Travis mentioned, you're talking to the 1% here, the construction technologists within the trades, where There's a lot of contractors out there that aren't talking about this kind of stuff, but there's still a lot of those contractors that exist. What we want to know is when do we become the ones that only exist? When do we, I mean, this is an investment in the future, right? So I'm curious to see, I mean, are you seeing less and less competition from the people that aren't doing all this? Because I think that's the age old metric that everybody's looking for. We want to invest in all this stuff, but if there's still a bunch of people out there existing without it, I think that's creating doubt, right? I mean, at what point do they not exist, right? And who wants that one, huh?
Gabe.
Sorry, what was that?
Throw the new guy under the bus. There we go.
Yep.
I think that's probably pointed at Chad. I mean, Chad, are you seeing?
I mean, you're working in some of those bigger markets too, right? I mean, you're like we are.
I was kind of, thinking when you're saying that it might be a different angle, but when you go to proposal stages, who can show off what they're doing better or more intuitive than somebody else might be the difference between getting a job and not getting a job. So it's like the more of us that are doing all this stuff, like you're saying, it has to start hurting some of those contractors that aren't willing to try it or just start realizing that, hey, the whole industry is moving to this electronic capturing. We might want to do that.
Right.
So I don't know.
Well, I think it's a put, like Rob said, it's got to be a push from the project level or the owner level. I think we are starting to see that. I mean, I think that,
yeah,
and maybe it's just, a stupidity or hope, overly optimistic on my part. But I think that we have evolved into an area where it's not strictly the lowest dollar. But, I don't know. Rob, you look like you're ready to comment.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, we're talking reality capture, but for a number of contractors, they might not even be using iPads to do, any sort of, timesheets or punch lists or anything. So not all this tech is high dollar or high learning curve. Some of these things are super simple, right? But that's how you have to get into it is get into some of these techs, understand the benefits, get comfortable with them, and then scale your tech stack, right? Probably starting with a laser scanner is probably not the first thing that any contractor should do, right?
Yeah. I mean, Chad, I guess I would say, you guys are utilizing not just laser scanning, but you're doing some stuff with OpenSpace. The stuff that you're doing with OpenSpace, you talk about this O&M delivery and some of the things you're doing for the customer. I mean, is that something that you're scoping and getting paid for, or is that something that you guys are trying to differentiate? I guess that's the main thing. Are you differentiating yourself from the competition as a value add to the customer, or is this something that you're only doing if they're paying you for it?
So right now we're trying to do it as a value add until we can figure out, is there a way to market this? Is there a way to get paid for it? I'm sure.
Or is it just a way to shut the rest of them out is my point, right?
Right.
Yeah. So right now we're figuring this out on our own. Every day we'll sit and brainstorm and try something else and see how it works. But yeah, we're just trying to do it on our own right now to get the benefit back to the owner and more or less the maintenance guy. He's the one that needs the information.
Right.
So that's what we're trying to do is make his life easier in the end.
I think that's where all. Oh, sorry, Gabe. Go ahead. I don't want to step on you.
I was just going to say it's funny. It was cutting in and out when Trent was finishing his question, and I was kind of catching on a bit of a delay. But I was going to say,
sorry.
It's a question that I think about all the time because, like, as a software company, it's like I think that's kind of the last stage in seeing that the impact you're having is real. Is that there's a clear difference in performance between people that are your customers and those that aren't. But I think kind of one piece is it happens in stages, right? So I think any industry that's experiencing any kind of 10x force is bound to see some change and disruption. And I feel like the first stage of that has been venture capital. I'm not sure how closely people in construction follow that, but that has skyrocketed. It's it's insanity how much money is getting poured into
The people
construction
here
tech
follow it a
tools.
lot. I don't know about everybody
yeah.
else.
We follow it a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
If anybody wants to send us a check,
Yep.
it's PO box.
There you go. So I think that's kind of what's come first. The tools are finally getting to the point, and I heard in one of your previous episodes, like, that talking about how some construction people are jaded by technology. Whenever I talk to those people, it's like, rightfully so. Like, what you were using 10 years ago was total crap for what your needs were. We're finally getting to the point, I think, we're closer to that. And then I think the last piece is like, construction happens along these really long kind of timelines, right? You could start a project that's 3 years long, and the tech can have an impact during that time, but will it have had enough of an impact for that next project to be like a different landscape? Like, it's tricky, right? Like, we have customers in Japan where one of them is like 217 years old. That's how old the company is. And they presented to us like a 10-year vision for the future. And it's like, we don't even know what we're building 8 weeks from now. Like, we have plans, right? But it's not like we wouldn't show a slide deck about it, right? So it's just kind of interesting. But I'd have to assume that over the next 5 years, we're going to see more of that differentiation. And sometimes we do run into customers that are doing it the old school way, and they're coming to us because their margins are getting smushed, and it's like, how do we
Or their
build
market
more
share.
Right.
value?
Yeah.
How do we protect ourselves? And increasingly, we are seeing customers use us in pursuits and in their bids. I feel like it's harder to tease out if we really were the differentiator, but I assume from a holistic view, it has to be an impact, right?
Right.
It was
You
kind of a
would
loaded
think-
question because we, Travis and I, with our companies, believe that that we are differentiating ourselves with the stuff that we're doing. But sometimes it's hard to prove to the money man, right?
Exactly.
That it is. So you're looking for that tangible evidence. So it's just kind of something to think about.
It's hard to point.
Sorry, Travis.
No, go ahead.
As a technology provider, that's something we look at. How many repeat logos versus new logos, right? To try to understand, right? How is the market moving? What sort of adoption are we seeing? There's still a good percentage of repeat logos, within the technology purchases, which says there's still opportunity, right, Trent? There's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah.
Sorry, Travis.
I know it's fine. I was just thinking that it was to Gabe and Trent's point. Like, it's hard to point at one specific thing as the differentiator or the thing that makes the margin better, but it has to be something inside of that whole approach that's doing it. In Trent in my world and in Chad's, like, we're trying a lot of different things, right? But I think that the mindset is what is driving it. And it did lead me to another question too. And this is kind of more towards the providers again. How are you handling, like you said, the industry's slow moving, it's big. These projects are long term, but to the conversation we had earlier, you guys iterate fast. And it's a problem for construction technologists. Chad, you can chime in from that point. Like, every 6 goddamn months, you guys are changing shit on us. How the hell do I use that on a 4-year project? Anybody, I help
anyone. No, I'm looking for advice.
That's right.
So from a bias perspective, one of my favorite things to say to a new customer, it's like, maybe they're signing a 3-year enterprise deal. You're going to get all the new features that are thrown in from that point. And ideally, right, I don't think this would happen, but you're not going to get like a full rework of the product. It's going to be iteration where people that know it are going to keep sticking with it, and people that are new are just going to take advantage of better ease of use, functionality, and all of that. But it is pretty interesting to see just kind of that struggle with, sometimes we approach a customer that's like mid-project, and it's like, well, I'm going to be doing a project after this. Why don't you contact me then? Well, when is that one starting? In 12 months. It's like, okay.
You're going to have a completely different product by then.
That sounds like something I would say. You know,
right.
There you go. There you go. So yeah, it's definitely kind of tricky. I mean, just for open space in particular, I think that's why we've been so aggressive about focusing in on that ease of use and kind of deployment, so that then anybody can get started within 15 minutes. And using off-the-shelf hardware, like I'm sure our R&D team fantasizes about what they could do with like a $20,000 like 8K VR backpack rig, but it's just not realistic to get buy-in for that. I think mid-project where it's kind of less proven out, whereas laser scanners demand that higher price point, but what you're going to get, and it's continuing to get better as well, right?
I think, Travis, to try to answer your question, I don't know that I have the perfect answer. I mean, obviously, if the technology providers are listening to the customers, we are iterating based on what we're being asked for, right? So it shouldn't be frivolous or crazy or no value, features and enhancements. But to your point, I mean, at some point, you've got a schedule to stay on, right? So adopting that might not be at first release, right? It might be, hey guys, don't touch that menu for the next 6 months, right? Kind of thing. The hard part for us is we're looking for adoption and confirmation that what we're doing is what we were asked to do, and that there's value there, so that we can move on to the next. So for us, there's another side of that, which is, okay, we've released X. Is the adoption of this to the rate we expected? Is it behind? And then you start wondering, right? Did we miss the mark? Or is it exactly what you said? Hey, I've got a schedule that I have to stick to. I can't just stop and implement this whole new feature set or tech or whatever. So we have a side of that on the technology side as well, right?
Trent and Travis, you guys are cracking me up with your comments down here.
Sorry. We were just talking about. It was. It reminded me of because I've had software providers in our world where I've come to them with problems with changes. We'll piggyback right on the subject. There's something that changed, and I'll go to them and be like, "Hey, this isn't working the way it did." And they're like, "Well, we had in the release notes," and I'm like, "Wait. We're not going to read the release notes. What do you like? Like you can't." So it's just
you have 30 seconds to explain to me what you changed. Otherwise, my focus is gone.
So sorry. It was the people in the video aren't going to realize what happened there, but I'm just describing it in the chat. So yeah, for all you your tech companies out there, don't expect your construction customers to read the release notes. It's not.
And as someone that has written release notes, I'm really hurt by that. Like, that takes time, guys. It really does.
You're personally. I'm sorry. Okay, this is a moment. Let's all sip our drinks and just take a breath. It'll be okay. It'll be okay.
Yeah. Death to the release notes. Yeah.
Right.
No, I'm sure there's thousands of dollars that go into those too. I get it, but I'm just. I'm going to spare you, man.
Right.
They're about as useful as engineered drawings,
I gave my product team this box with a piece of dog shit in it, and I finally got them to push one button. And you've just added a second button. I'm not going to read what that second button does, and I'm not going to even tell. Don't push it. Do not push that second button.
So, our ships are hard to steer, right? I think that's what it is, and it's just we can't. You might do 2 releases a week or something we can't re-steer the ship twice a week. That's not, we're lucky to work in every quarter, I don't know. It's kind of, so I think that's why we don't operate at the frequency that you guys do in that world.
And Chad, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this too. I think this might've been off air, but we made a joke about this job giving us ADD. The people that Rob and Gabe are leaning on, the Trents, the Chads, and the Travises of the world. I have 16 release notes to read every week. And then I have to go out and try to steer 30 project teams. Is that your experience too, Chad?
Yeah, so we also use Procore for our construction management software.
Yeah.
And it's like every other day I get another release note that they're changing this, changing that. So I skim them really fast, kind of like you're saying. And if I see one that I think's interesting to our users, I'll send out an email to whoever to say, hey, check this out, or see if this.
But you're just adding to the flood of email that they get in a week too.
Well, yeah, because
not saying this is the wrong thing to do, because I do the exact same thing, but
yeah. Or I'll send them a message on Teams or whatever. It's like you're saying, you're just giving them more stuff. It's like your iPhone. Every day I turn the thing on, it seems like there's another software update with blah 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 blah. I don't read it. I just hit install.
Right.
It's tough. It's tough to keep up with the change and to understand what the change is all the time.
Yeah,
I think this is part of the subscription problem, right? Perpetual licenses, you got 2, maybe 3 a year kind of thing, right? It was more manageable, but in the subscription world, we can iterate, and this is the result.
I think, I don't know, one thing that I always push the product team on is like my benchmark for what digital experiences should be like is consumer mobile apps. Like nobody needs to teach you how to use Venmo or your bank app or, kind of a lot of the other apps that people just download and start using, because there's been so much user experience testing and research and all of that done that you come in and you click on what makes sense and it just works. I always hope that like construction tech is able to get there to where a person can think like, oh, I want to see this measurement in a laser scan. And again, that path from point A to point B is as short as possible. And the same with what we're doing at OpenSpace. We're always focused on that, but I think there's so much room for improvement there to where, like, what if we got to a place where you just didn't read the release notes at all? Like maybe we wouldn't even send them out. Who knows?
Well, we're there already. I mean,
we established that. Thanks.
Save your money. Don't even publish them.
Just call us 3 months later and ask if we started to use that new feature.
Right.
Yes.
Right. I think it's just testament to the amount of new players in the space. It's testament to the infancy of what we're doing. There's clearly a lot of changes and improvements because we're very early down the road with technology, I think, in our industry, and it's only going to ramp up exponentially from here. So it's kind of, we joke about it. I think that's why, Chad, Travis, and myself, that's why we see so many release notes and we see so many of that, is because we're involved in so many things that are just rapidly evolving. So it's kind of a good problem to have, but we joke about, maybe save a little bit of your time and not, you don't have to go too crazy into the text, the release notes. But
I actually personally have always refused to write them, kind of for that reason.
Probably a legal thing, right? I'm sure there's,
right.
I mean,
yeah. Well, sometimes you feel like you have to be a lawyer to understand what the release notes even say. It's like, we're construction people, keep it simple.
Yeah, I would never be good at it either, because when I was doing tech, I would write documentation or anything like that. Just, if you can't tell my sense of humor, I'm going to put little Easter eggs and puns and shit in there that really shouldn't be in there.
Yeah. Version 2.3, more money. Should just say more money.
The quest for more money. I think this is a good time. We do regularly have contractors on, but I feel like it's been a little bit, maybe since the MEP winners. But I love to ask people in chat's seat. You can include reality capture, but what other kind of cool shit are you guys going after? What are your big initiatives?
So besides reality capture, construction management softwares. So, right now we're using Procore. Seeing what they can do. We've been with them for a couple of years now. That's another big one. Is we've all been there where you have all this data, but what do you do with it? One of my first projects out of college was working at the Pentagon, and it was a construction side, so we're doing a lot of work there.
Name
and then I was
drop.
asked to go find. That was with Hensel Phelps, and then we were asked to go find something from one of the previous builds. So the old banker boxes, those are fun to always search through to find something, right? So digital storage of all the material. Inside of my company, we're also working on building a new platform for our users to use through SharePoint for the company website and stuff like that to understand the training materials, understand everything. Updating the model with statuses. So when we're doing our captures, we want the model to also update to show it's installed. We want our manufacturing company to update the model saying, this ductwork from A to Z is in fabrication or it's in BIM still. So getting live data and a visual model so people can understand that's another avenue that we're focusing hard on right now as well.
Those are great, and I'm sure Trent and I could, if you ever want to reach out, we may have some thoughts on that, because they're all things that we're tackling at the same time.
A lot of things we've been working on too. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. What do you guys use?
I don't want to pump up names too much here, but yeah, we're using some, what would typical, what you would think is softwares out there that what are the big three? Evolve, Stratus. You could probably throw Victolic Tools there, and then
Okay.
M Suite. Yeah.
M Suite. Yeah.
Yeah, we're using two of those
Yeah.
that you mentioned as well.
Yeah. So, and but to your point too, there's a lot of endpoints that could be available. There's stuff from Faro. There's stuff from OpenSpace. There's stuff from to kind of feed into that endpoint, that ultimate goal of where you capture stuff that's installed. So cool. And obviously we have a mechanical contracting bent here with the ones that are on there. So we're all chasing our tails on the same problem. So
exactly.
Trent, did you have something?
No, I didn't. I feel like maybe we're maybe at a good spot to kind of.
Yeah, unless the software and hardware vendors. I mean, if you had any more, Rob, I think, well, Gabe, you guys just got another round of funding, but Rob, you actually you're a publicly traded company, so you can't give away the future secrets too much, but maybe as resident nerds, you can kind of talk about the kind of stuff that you really would nerd out to see in the future.
I think so. Maybe just a comment. So, Faro's going through a big transition. We are driving really hard to get more in touch with the customers and make sure that we're developing, solutions that add the value. Even if we give it to you and you don't read the release notes, that's fine. But, I think for us,
struck a nerve, I think.
Yeah. Maybe just a little. That's okay though. I'll survive. But I think, on the reality capture piece, which is obviously something that is at the root of what Faro does, we've been talking here about visual and dimensional accuracy and measurements, but there's other aspects of reality capture, right? As a topic, there are so many other facets of reality capture. And I think, for us, Chad, you touched on it a couple times on the O&M side. Like, we've actually carved out of our AEC segment an O&M segment to try to focus more on the owners and that maintenance and operation of facilities, whether it's automotive production or it could just be commercial buildings, right? And being able to provide solutions out of the construction, but into the ongoing continuation of operation, because obviously way more money spent in the operation of a building than even on the construction side. And, there's any number of opportunities to get more data that can help those owners be way more efficient in the operation of their facilities. So, we've specifically made that a target for us to really start focusing on and make sure we look for new opportunities to provide value.
Awesome. Gabe, any reading of the tea leaves?
I think what we're kind of looking at, I don't know, it's so funny, just working with customers all across the world in my time at OpenSpace, BIM adoption means very different things. I've always loved working with mechanical contractors that seem to consistently be leading the pack with just the new technology, the BIM, the just doing it better, prefab, like kind of all of the above. And I think we're really paying attention to what we can start to integrate with, given that, using BIM realistically, because they're not open standards, means we're using a specific tool to do a specific thing. How can we start to tie everything together, looking in the direction of like the customer already has this data? How can we play nice with it? How can we tie into it? Making it easy to go from looking at the floor plans to the model to what the reality is, right? Like what the image is saying is on site, and then seeing kind of what automated insights we can pull out of that, kind of the idea that you feed the information in and we can at least give you here's where to focus your attention, which I think is something that still is kind of lacking. Chad touched on it earlier, that we're gathering all this data. How do we really get ROI out of having all of that data? And I think that's one of the places where we can start to make an impact and just doing a better job of tying things together.
That's awesome.
Well, I guess you guys had your Chad, you got any last remarks on that topic or anything? I guess we're coming about the time.
Yeah, I don't think I do. There's just a lot of neat tools out there. You just got to try them all. Like we said several times, try them all and whatever suits you the best. It's kind of where you got to go.
Read the
How are
release
you going to know
notes.
if you don't read the release notes? Come on.
This is
Man,
I've
I told you,
definitely
have 30 seconds.
definitely struck a nerve here, I think. But,
Yep.
hey, I don't think I'm alone here, Rob. I think no.
Here's what I will say though. Sometimes I get so jealous. Like when you said 16 sets of release notes, that's 16 different tools that you get to play with. Like sometimes I feel a little jealous on this side. Like, yeah, maybe I have like some of the inside knowledge of
Careful what you wish for,
that's
right?
Going on. But like sometimes I talk to teams that like they have all of the newest scanners, they're piloting the newest startup, softwares, and that does seem kind of cool. I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, it is cool. It's hard to layer it all together and stack it together, and like kind of the old saying goes, like it's better to whole ass one thing than half ass a bunch of things. And sometimes that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you struggle to make all of those things really really work the way they're intended. But there's a play for it out there though. I mean, there's a reason why we
for
dabble
sure
in that many.
Yeah.
I think all of us on the construction end, I think that we wish for a one solution, one ring to rule them all, one solution that wins it all, but then we lose the competition that we talked about earlier. And that is really what kind of drives things forward. So we understand the pains that we have to go through to manage that.
Yeah. Well, you lose the best in breed. I mean, you lose so there's a reason why we do this. There's a reason why we look at all the different,
There's a reason why we drink.
Yeah. But there's a play out there for the contractor to utilize software and equipment from Faro, to utilize the same from OpenSpace, to utilize, the people that we're talking to here today. I mean, there's a play for all of these things to exist in conjunction with each other. And one of these days we'll hopefully convince all of them to play nice with each other. So,
right. Nathan Wood.
If we do it, it'll be in the release notes. You'll never know.
Damn it. It's going to keep coming back.
It might have already happened.
That's right. Good point, Gabe.
How would I know?
That's right.
How would I know?
We're trying
Don't you
to
know
save
that
you
Trimble
money and
already integrates with Procore and
Yeah.
Autodesk and
yeah.
If I would have just
Faro and the
read.
dog and
Mhm.
Oh, right. Well, guys, no, I really appreciate all of you
yeah, thank
taking
you
the
very
time
much.
to chat with us here today. This has been a lot of fun. So we're coming up on our time, and I guess at this point we'll go ahead and sign off. This has been Construction DorkCast, episode 44. BIM is Reality. And thanks to the guests, Chad, Gabe, Rob. You guys have been awesome.
You've been awesome.
And, thanks to all the people out there in the chat room. And until next time.
All right. Good job, Jeff. Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you all. See ya.
So just kind of trying to put as little effort into this as possible and seeing what the results are.
Hey, I'm switching some audio and video stuff around. So I'm just testing to see if it's working.
Yeah, we hadn't noticed, Chad.
What's that?
I said we hadn't noticed.
I sometimes joke that I think this job gave me ADD. I don't know if I had it before, but I definitely have it now.
Construction will do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes
It
a lot
also-
of sense.
Construction also can make you very paranoid because I feel like you're always waiting for the next disaster. Like you're always like paranoid for the next, like what's going to go wrong. You know, you're always kind of sitting there waiting. Unfortunately, there's a little bit of that in construction.
Yeah. Or you're always in defense mode all the time.
Right. Yeah. Which can be paranoia, right? I mean, it's the same kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. The guard's always up. Like somebody's going to try and take money from me today. Like, I just know it. I just know it. And we're talking like, think of that asshole that you hated on the last project. Like that's the guy you want to hire. I mean,
Sometimes you want the asshole to work for
yeah,
you.
yeah, you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of like
He's looking out for his
attorneys.
company.
Yeah, exactly, Rob. Just like attorneys. Hey, how's it going?
There can
There we
only
go.
be one.
There we go.
There we go. No, now you're both Rob Miller.
Perfect.
So I was a quality manager there, and I always had to worry about, like 30, 35 subs doing everything. So then I came to US. I'm like, hey, I don't have to worry about myself. So I don't care about the rest of the subs.
We were talking about that earlier, that this is not as serious as the PR people thought it was. You didn't even see the other side. That was like the internal briefing for us. Like we have a document with like all of your faces, like your guys'
my God.
like bios, like and
Well, my company didn't provide me with all your bios, so I did a quick LinkedIn search.
Right.
To make sure.
The PR team wasn't knocking at your door.
Yeah, I am the PR team for myself, apparently.